My name is Josh Halpern. I'm a former U.S. Commercial Service Officer, so U.S. diplomat. I help U.S. companies get into overseas markets through e-commerce. Was stationed in China for a number of years, came back and launched the Obama administration's e-commerce innovation lab in Silicon Valley to help companies figure out how to go global through e-commerce. And now we've really, over the years, built out training support network for merchants around both coming into the U.S. and going outbound, and all the aspects of global expansion, predominantly related to digital and e-commerce. So all of the stuff that we do is free. We get funded by either grants from governments or do sponsorship partnerships as well. In doing so, I met Vince a few years ago. We both were doing a lot in California with the ports. Vince has been doing this for since before I was born. I like to say that. I don't even know if he's older than me, but probably even if he weren't, Vince.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Josh.
Yeah. And he was one of the few New Yorkers in California, and we stand out like I don't know, black thumbs, I guess. So Vince and I are both fast talkers and intense, and that's going to be hopefully good for you because it's efficient. So with that, I'm going to kick it off with Vince. Vince, thanks for joining and breaking it down for us today.
Yeah, so I just don't have video access, so it's up to you.
Oh, you don't?
I can do it verbally.
For those of you who've seen Vince, I was going to spare you, but I'm going to give you video access anyway. I don't even know how to...
And full disclaimer, my internet went out about 3 minutes ago, so I'm on my hotspot. So I'm hoping that everything seems
let's
to be
keep
working.
Video off for now.
Yeah.
If you want to see what video looks like, what Vince looks like, click on the video on the right, and he's going through the similar presentation on the right, and you can do that at a later date.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, today, we're going to talk about a bunch of different topics, and I'll flip through the slides as you tell me. We're going to start here full screen. If you are on the portal, you can actually click ahead in advance, and you can cheat. But if you're not on the portal, you can't cheat. You got to follow us. So, Vince, obviously today we're going to talk about. Tell us what we're going to talk about today.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks, Josh is 100% on. We're both kind of high octane folks here, which hopefully benefits you. I think it will benefit you, actually. It definitely will. So first, I'm Vince Capella. I'm EVP Growth and Strategy at Alba Wheels Up. I've been in the Los Angeles market for about 32 years, and mostly on Trans-Pacific, but not exclusively, focused on sourcing abroad for U.S. companies that are selling in the United States to retailers in the old model, brick and mortar retailers, and getting goods to market. We're customs brokers, freight forwarders, end-to-end supply chain. We have a lot of business intelligence. We have a tech module. So obviously my legacy experience is in what everybody else's legacy experience is in. You know, I source overseas, I sell to big retailers, I sell to boutiques. And then I met Josh a couple of years ago, as he said, when this amazing thing was happening where, online marketplaces were popping up and folks were buying things online. Lay on top of that a couple of statutory, law changes, rule changes that made it a little more facilitative to bring in shipments duty-free if they qualified. If the U.S. reseller could identify the U.S. consumer. And then on top of that, you had changes in that regulation. And then we had the China 301 duties, which made duties very expensive. And on top of that, we had the pandemic. So I think if you look at the last 3 to 4 years, with consumer spending habits, with changes in rules and regulations, you see this explosion of cross-border direct-to-consumer direct transactions. So I think that's a good way to set the table. If we could make that slide, we could take the slide larger. There you go.
And real quick, Vince, so we got our poll in. If people haven't voted, vote. But 69% of the people on the call actually do source from overseas and sell into the U.S. So perfect model. And again, we are going to address. My job here is just to keep Vince on track. The man knows everything I could think of and more around importation strategies and all that. But we got to make sure we get through the basics as well. So Vince, hit us up the basics
Here
of
we
what we're
go.
talking about.
Here's the
Yeah.
basics. The basic, so 69% is very good. We have an audience that is very familiar with sourcing overseas, and
Crap. Okay, hold on. I'm there.
am
We
I
go.
back?
You're back. I'm an idiot. Go.
Okay, no, you're not. So anyway, so where was I? So yeah, so hopefully 69% is a great number. We're going to go a little high level then. So all of you have been sourcing overseas and selling stuff in the United States, either on an online marketplace or or to a retailer. So all of you are familiar with cross-border issues, duties, taxes, all of that. The legacy model is still 80 to 70 to 80% of existing transactions are in that old model, and it's exactly the same thing at Alba in our company, right? But the important trend is that if the 25 to 27% of people's inventories are growingly being sold on online marketplaces and direct to consumer. So what does that mean? What it means is that 2016, a law was changed to change the value of shipments that are allowed to come in duty free if they meet certain requirements from $200 to $800. So that obviously widened the funnel of shipments that were eligible to be entered into the United States, providing they met other requirements. Up to $800. That's a pretty big figure. The average de minimis amount in other countries is like $45, $30. So depending on whether the ultimate purchaser's identity is known, and that's important, we'll get into that later, depending on whether you can identify the consumer when it crosses this border, can make it eligible for Section 321 entry. So if you go to the next slide, Josh, please. Thanks. I hate saying that, but it's just more efficient this way. So basically, what do we do? We have this legacy business where we're handling big importers, U.S. resellers. We're dealing directly with factories overseas that are selling in the U.S. And these big bulk shipments are coming in, and we're paying duties. And if you have apparel or fashion items, you're paying high duties. And on top of that, we get, in the Trump administration, we get the 301 duties, which makes duties really, really, really expensive now, right? So everybody's looking at this. Everybody's looking at this duty cost. How do I fit it into my unit price? How do I stay competitive? Do I pass this on to my retailer? Do I try to fold this into my existing unit price? And it's just a lot of unbudgeted cost. On top of that, you add the Trans-Pacific maritime issues from 2021. And on top of that, obviously the pandemic with consumers buying more on marketplaces. So if we go to, we'll stay on this slide a second. I just want to show you what our company has built for those shipments that apply are various ways you can still ship the way you shipped before, with certain nuances, and crossed into our border when you know the consumer. So we have those 4 services lined up. I'll go through each one, efficiently, hopefully. So Josh, if you could go to the next slide, we'll do that.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm getting there. There we go.
Yeah. So, so basically, this is the air service. This is the service that exploded in 1993 in the courier market, right? With UPS and FedEx, and it's existed since the early 90s. But remember, the limit back then was 200, 250, around there. So basically, when you use the air model into the United States, so it shows China, but it doesn't have to be China. It could be any country in the world. But obviously, Asia is a big player in the consumer products market. So basically, in the air model, which is the oldest model, you have to know. I'm pointing at my screen, but no one can see me. But so you have to know when those planes leave Asia, who the consumer is, right? And that was the old model, right? I'm in a warehouse in China, and I'm coming over, and you have to know who that consumer is when it actually lands in the United States. If you can do that, and it's eligible, we can do Section 321 on those shipments. And the questions that are asked is, and I know these questions, but my screen is a little small here. Do I need to know the buyers before it ships? Yes, I do in this case. If I provide a harmonized tariff schedule, will it clear faster? Yes. In the entry type 86 program, it will. Can I clear goods that require other PGA's fancy way of saying food and drug, other agencies? You now can in the last year and a half. If I have medical devices and things like that, they are eligible. Sunglasses, things like that. Is each particular, is it 800 per day? Yes, it's 800 per person per day. So you're up, so Josh can buy up to $800 a day duty free of a certain item, and then the next day he could start over again. So this is the legacy model, which if 70% of you were doing this before, maybe you already know. And those packages that were showing up at your doorstep and your neighbor's doorstep, those most likely still are coming, many of them in an air environment, right? Because of the customer expectation of when they want that package.
Vince, just real quick. So when we say the legacy model, I mean, really the legacy model is not really legacy is not airplanes. It's shipping in a giant container, a landing, distributors, importing product or importing a mass quantity of wholesale products, not doing de minimis, kind of getting around this, and then paying those duties, and then picking, packing, and delivering within the U.S. That's the real what you call a legacy model, correct?
Well, the legacy model, which is still the dominant model, yes, it still is the dominant model. The only nuance is to what Josh just said is there was a lot of error in the legacy model, but it came in bulk, and you paid duty on it. You brought it to your fulfillment center, your distribution center, and then a decision was made. Am I going to sell the retail? Am I going to go direct to consumer? But yes, that's correct.
Right. Okay. And so what you're saying essentially, just to make sure everybody's on the same plane here, is that if you have any way of getting products into the U.S., but with knowing who the end consumer is in advance and having those products under $800 per person per day,
correct,
then any of these models that we're about to talk to are viable.
Correct.
And those who are more advanced know that our friend Earl over in Congress has put forward a bill that may have problems with that, and we will address that. We're not completely unaware of that, obviously.
We're very aware of it, and we'll touch it maybe after review. We'll have an honest talk about it. So I want to. This is a direct ocean. I don't want to spend too much time on this model because only some big marketplaces really have the resources to get this done. These are direct containers in which you can identify consumers before they leave China. This is very tough for a lot of folks because a lot of people, once you identify the consumer, you don't have 25 days to get that to market, right? You have maybe 3 to 7 days. So just know that some big marketplaces are using ocean and they are coming directly to the United States. But I'm going to fast forward to the next two slides, where you don't have to know the consumer. Okay, so what's different here? What's different here is my goods are in Taiwan or China or South Korea. And I don't know the consumer, but my goods are ready. And my only option right now is to move it by ocean into Long Beach, file a formal entry, pay duties on it, put it in my warehouse, and ship it when it sells, right? But we have other options now. So I could actually bring that ocean into Long Beach. I can move it to a bonded facility in northern Mexico on the Otay Mesa Tijuana border, which is an hour and a half from Los Angeles. It's San Diego. And I can hold it for up to 18 months in Mexico until it sells to a consumer. And when it sells to a consumer, I can cross it by truck into the US market. And many companies are employing this strategy. And by the way, there's a lot of choice. I can hold my inventory for up to 18 months. And if a portion of it wants to go to brick and mortar, I can pay duties and do that. And if another portion is going direct to consumer, we can use Section 321. A couple of quick questions. Do I have to know, do I pay any duties in California when it arrives? I don't. do I have to, I can't read this too well. Do I have to,
Oh,
do I have to know the shipper? I don't at this point. That's what's different. I had one customer who brought in Black Friday in like July, right? And he just kept it here until he shipped it. So the other two, do I have to pay, do I hold the goods in Mexico until the
and
product
ship
sells?
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And it's always 800 per day. So this is a really viable model. It's not very new. It's more known now. We could always do a deeper dive on a breakout, but I just want to be aware of that. This is a service we built that we thought we would never use, but we built it. This is Asia to Ensenada, which is a Mexican port, about an hour south of Tijuana. Don't hold me to that drive time, but in the northern Baja, not far from Tijuana, reachable to Tijuana warehouses. So you go into Ensenada and you go into the IMX that way. This became popular when the Port of Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles became very congested and very delayed. You saw ocean carriers in China like Wanhai just adding services to Ensenada. And Maersk has a service as well as some others. So we have shipped directly into Mexico under the same principle. We don't have to go to all these questions again, but the principle is the same, right? The principle is I really don't know my consumers yet, and I'm going to put them into a warehouse. And then once I know them, I'm going to ship. Interestingly enough, we have people going directly into Ensenada who do know the consumers, right? And it moves within 2 to 3 days from Ensenada to the northern border crossing by truck. And then it gets dropped into last mile once you're on the US side of the border. So you could go to the next section.
Sure. And I see 2 arrows go in 2 different directions. So in general, you drop it into San Diego or LA, and then you ship from there or elsewhere.
Well, yeah, 2 things. One, the guy who did this is from the Midwest. So the ship looks like it's going to Cabo, not Ensenada. But secondly, yes, you can actually go anywhere from the border. Like you could get on, once you cross, you can go east and distribute east or west and drop it. And the reason people are doing that on last mile is the zoning on the last mile, right? Like the UPS and FedEx zones, where they hit the last consumer. So most people that are doing this at a high volume have kind of like 2 arrangements, an East Coast and a West Coast arrangement. So this is Canada. I do need to know, in our program, we can do it both ways, but this is really, I'm going to cut to the chase. This is for people who also know their consumer, but what we like about Canada is that we bring it into our inventory in Canada, and we cross by truck, and truck manifest on the northern border between Canada and the US is very advanced, very efficient. So you don't have to file all the security filings that one would have to file if the vessel was coming to the United States. It's still secure because it gets entered into the Canadian market, goes through our warehouse, and crosses by truck. This is an alternative to the direct to LA or direct to Seattle or direct to Oakland. Another reason this became popular in 21 was, again, the port congestion on the US West Coast. So I do need to know the consumer. It's still $800 a day, but it's a great ocean freight alternative to coming directly to the US West Coast.
Questions?
Sure.
Because I know it's hard for you to hear to read too. So is it the same apply in terms of getting PGA or regulated goods in through Canada, same as Mexico?
Yes, yes. And I just want to dive down for 2 minutes on that. So when you're on Section 321, was traditionally a filing off of a manifest, a shipping manifest. So you had very simple release conditions. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Customs, started a pilot program, or it's really an NCAP, it's really a test, where something called Entry Type 86. So Entry Type 86 allows a filer to give more data to Customs and Border Protection, like a 10-digit harmonized tariff number, like data that FDA would need to clear sunglasses, right? So this 86 entry is applicable, can be applied at any port of entry, right? So yes, the answer is yes, we can do it from Canada if it
Okay.
if
And
it applies.
why would you? I get the sorry, but on a macro level, why would you go Canada versus Mexico? It sounds like obviously geographically, if you're going to be doing northern U.S. or even into Canada, that's great to have the options. Is it? It's probably, is it more costly because there's certain processing fees that are a Canada price point versus Mexico?
Yeah,
Or
this is I gotta like think about my answers to keep them brief, but this is a really important point that you're making. There are a lot, there are more than one or two nuances here. Um, Traditionally, American companies, won't name names, but really large retailers were using Canada for 10 years on this program, right? And to warehouse
yeah.
without paying duty in Canada, to warehouse for extended periods of time is more complicated than Mexico, right? You can do it, but you have to go on what's called a duty deferred program. You need some infrastructure in Canada to keep goods without paying duty, to keep goods duty free in Canada until you're ready to ship to the US. Takes a little bit of a lift. So what we use Canada for is the US alternative. Mexico, with I don't know how many of you remember, I'm old, as Josh said. I don't know how many of you remember the Maquila programs, like the Maquila Doro, the Maquila programs. Now they're IMEXs. It's the same principle. It's very transactional. So almost anybody can plug in right away into Mexico if you have the right IMEX facility, where you can put your goods in the IMEX, and up to 18 months, I don't pay duties. I don't clear anything in Mexico. I don't need an importer of record in Mexico. It's much easier to plug in if you're going to have goods in Mexico for a couple of months. I think that's the distinction, if that's helpful, Josh.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, that's it. We're up to the next one. Significant savings to apparel companies.
All right, so this is an eye opener, and I know we overuse it, but if it's true, why not just keep pounding this point? This is an important point. Prior to the 301 duties, or the new duties from China that came about in 2017, the politically correct way of calling them, right? Those duties, prior to that, we found that if you're paying a 6 to 8% duty rate, that sometimes the logistics costs of doing these things will cancel out your duty savings. But if you're paying 6% plus 25%, or 6% plus 7.5% from China, that changes the game a little bit, because now you're up to 30%. But there were certain commodities like apparel and others where they had very high duty rates even before the China duties in 2017, right? So some acrylic blouses are north of 30%, right? So I have a container of, this is a real case study that we have in front of us. So I have a container of blouses that, had they been entered in the legacy way, the importer, the US company, the company selling it to the retailer or to whomever, would have paid $30,000 in duty, right? But by doing the Mexico program and just keeping it in storage in Mexico and waiting for it to fulfill, waiting for it to sell the consumer, and crossing under 321, they paid zero duty. So that's one container, $75,000 worth of blouses and you'll even see that we even break it out, right? So you have the 32% on the top line. That was the legacy duty rate. Now I have 7.5 with the China duties, right? So, and then there's some merchandise processing fees that always exist. And then, so now I'm at $30,000. This is obviously the most extreme example of savings, but if your logistics costs are 4,000 or 5,000 extra and your duties are 12, you're still saving 6, right? So that's kind of like the way to look at it, and we can help you that way.
That's great. Your partner should be able to. So this is kind of stuff that you know, whatever you're using, whether you're doing Alba or anybody, this is the kind of things that we were reducing down to, like what you should be able to get from whoever's doing your importation and freight, right?
Right.
Do you need me to read it, or you can see it?
No, I can see it. So,
okay.
So basically, we're not the only one in this space. There's not a lot of people in the ocean space. There's more people jumping in. Obviously, the big integrators and the U.S. courier companies have been using Section 321 for small package since the early 90s, right? Since 1993. So a lot of this is not so new. So create your Section 321. Josh knows I hate the word bypass, or I hate the word loop around, or whatever, because it's right. This is legal. This is part of U.S. law. So it's really, you're not like, evading or anything like that. As long as the goods apply and they are eligible, you should be talking to your partner about 321 if you can identify consumer. There's a huge amount of logistics that is involved. Obviously, you saw those charts. You have goods moving from Asia into North America, then they're being warehoused, then they're moving across the border. Almost all of the IMEXs, if they're going to distribute for you, they want a POS, a point of sale. So whether you're on Shopify or BigCommerce, most of the serious folks in Mexico will want that feed. And when somebody presses a button on your platform or your marketplace and buys something, that pick ticket will automatically come at the warehouse, and they'll start picking it and fulfilling it. So it works just like the fulfillment you're probably used to already. And then one thing we do at Alba is we have business intelligence, and we have the control tower. So you'd be able to basically see all of this, remotely, and have direct access to your inventory. So,
wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to talk about Blumenauer for 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think, so that's great. Thank you. I'm going to exit this so I can find that book a call link that I wanted to get from your people. Because before we get into Earl Blumenauer and the bill, which is important, I think a lot of people probably have questions for, and if you don't know about it, you'll hear about it and you'll have questions for it. Obviously, you can tell Vince knows his stuff. I go to him for everything I need whenever I have questions, and I've got a link to book a call. I'm going to put it in the chat. Meanwhile, okay, Vince, rocket. Tell us what this bill is and what we should do.
Yeah. So Representative Blumenauer from the Portland, Oregon area, and others have talked about adding into legislation that just passed the House, making this Section 321 not eligible from China. Now, obviously, China is still a huge producer. 321 right now is not restricted. It's not only a China program, it works for any country, but obviously there are geopolitical sensitivities about China and in both parties. And there is a huge move in the House of Representatives in both parties to really look at why all of these small packages can come in from China duty-free. Well, the reason is there's a law that says it can, but so that's why the Blumenauer, Representative Blumenauer, wrote into the House law that just passed that Section 321 would not be eligible for, would not be applicable to Chinese origin goods. It's in the same law of the general system of preferences and some other stuff, which we think he cares about more, but I'm not going to game that right now. So right now it's in the Senate. They believe it has to go through Senate Finance. What's funny is that I believe there is still anti-China sentiment in the Senate, but the Senate is less reactionary than the House. Usually, it's usually a longer strategic look. And prior to this 321 thing from China, we haven't seen many people in the Senate, even staffers, say that there's a huge appetite for this, but it obviously could definitely pass. Just got a note this morning that they're right before getting on this program that there is going to be an update today as to when the Senate might look at this. If not, it might be in your new feed already.
Let's assume that this happens, because ultimately, when or if it does pass, we're not going to be on the phone with you at the time. What are companies doing? And again, I mean, just so everyone understands, ideally, what we're saying about this program being too good to be true, the idea that you essentially could avoid all duties and taxes if you have products under $800 and you know the end consumer, not even before you ship it to Mexico or Canada, but before you ship it into the U.S. Great thing, obviously. Something you should probably know about, hopefully taken advantage of for the last couple of years. And that's also part of the reason why, hey, Congress, I think fairly got wind of it and was like, wait a second. So let's assume that this gets shut down. What are you seeing retailers doing? Are they coming? Are they now all of a sudden?
Well, I just got Magic. I was just at the Apparel show Monday and Tuesday, and all these questions all came up. And here's my answer to that. I think you'll see the same thing that happened when the China 301 duties. It's a trade remedy, right? So if it's a trade remedy and it's punitive, then I think you'll see some of the same things that happened when the 301 duties. Like it's not going 321 is not going away for Vietnam. It's not.
What do you mean by 321? Tell people what 301 and
Section 321 that we were talking about.
So you're saying de minimis, the idea of having a de minimis of $800.
Yeah, it's not going away for Vietnam and these other countries, right? It's only going away for China. So what you'll see, I believe, the same thing you saw when the 2017 China duties came. You'll see people sourcing trying to source outside of China to go back for eligibility to the requirement, right? Now, I don't want to get overly complicated, but if you add general systems of preferences being reinstated, which makes some countries in Asia duty-free anyway in certain commodities, then it becomes, less of an issue. But I top line, I think people will start to pay duty on some of that stuff, right? Because it is small value and small packages. It is under $800. You pay duty on it, or I think folks will look for alternate countries of sourcing where the 321 will still be eligible, right? Because this is only about China.
So let me ask you something. If people are going to say, okay, well, it's only about China, so there's three options, right? One, start manufacturing in the US. Doesn't seem likely for a lot of our companies. Two, correct me when I'm wrong. Two, you move your manufacturing out of China to elsewhere. Or three, you take China goods, you bring them into Mexico. This is the question for you. No. How much do you have to do to that item to have it qualify as having enough added value that it no longer is a sole source from China?
So the last question has been asked to me, no exaggeration, 20 times this week, right? So there's no easy answer. First of all, to be eligible for USMCA, which is the new name for NAFTA, and from what we can see so far, from NAFTA to USMCA, there hasn't been huge changes in the rules of origin for apparel. To be eligible for regional content treatment, a couple of things need to happen. And I think it's a breakout, but just to say that there has to be a substantial transformation. It usually results in a shift in the 16-digit tariff number, but it also has to do with the percentage of value of content and labor that needs to be added to Mexico. So you really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, but there are a lot of companies considering that. So maybe I'll bring my raw material, I'll do my assembly in Mexico. I know some companies are looking at doing assembly in Mexico now with some finished goods. You have companies looking at bringing in raw goods into Mexico and doing light manufacturing, trying to get to that level. Because what Josh is talking about is that if there's a sufficient change within the USMCA rules, then you could claim country of origin Mexico, right? In certain cases, and that would come in duty-free under USMCA, which, by the way, is not a new concept. I mean, again, NAFTA passed back in the the 90s.
It's just the incentives are now aligned to want to do that more.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I saw something in some brief about the bill that it's not just China, that it's also other emerging economies or underdeveloped. I don't know what the selection was.
That might be the case. And the reason why gaming it out, China is the ones getting the most. Maybe I heard that Vietnam might have been included, but it's kind of the reason I say it's that part of it is a moot point is because nobody that we're talking to on the Hill, and we have a lot of trade folks that know a lot more than me that are on the Hill every day, in Washington every day, talking to staffers on Ways and Means and Senate Finance, right? So it's the odds of it getting folded into the Compete Act exactly as coming out of the House are very rare. I'm not saying that it won't happen, but it has to, the Senate's going to have their version of the bill, right? And what's going to be in their version, right?
Okay.
So that's why right now people are focused on China, maybe Vietnam. I mean, people wanted 2017 China duties to apply to Vietnam as well, right? So any of that can happen. Any of that can happen. The word that we heard in the last week or so was that the general system, the conditions that are tied to the general system of preferences called GSP, which makes certain emerging economies in Asia more competitive, nothing to do with 321, that Mr. Blumenauer is concerned about, labor in those countries and environmental issues, and that in those emerging markets, and that's very important to him, rightly so, and that may be more important to him than the 321 issue out of China. So it's really, I'm not saying, I've never said it wasn't going to happen, but we don't know that it's going to happen. It's going to look exactly like it looked coming out of the house, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you for that. If there's any other questions, please ping them now. I'm really enjoying it because this is so timely right now. Everybody is talking about this bill and what that's going to do. Real quick, so Alba you are doing these solutions when someone says, hey, I need to add enough value to then qualify for regional kind of importation from Mexico, all this stuff. Is Alba do this? Is that part of
our customers are doing it. So it's not a simple. We have a lot of infrastructure down there, and we know we have a lot of networking with folks who do light assembly, depending on the commodity, depending on the sector. But it's going to be a lift on your part on the sourcing, right? Like just you'd have to visit. It's a sourcing issue now. It's not just a 321 duty-free issue. It's a sourcing and manufacturing issue. So your sourcing group, whether that's you in a very small company alone, or it's one other person, whether you're in a large company with a whole sourcing team, whole production team, has to do the work down there. And yes, we can make recommendations. We know certain companies that specialize in certain types of goods. Some companies go to different levels of so yeah, I think that there definitely is, depending on your commodity, a little bit of work that you would need to do, but we could point you in the right direction in some cases.
Great. Okay. Well, with that, unless there's other questions, I'm going to check if there's any questions. No, good. Thanks everyone for joining. Vince, thanks for breaking it down. This has been another wonderful workshop from the GrowBig Initiative. If you're not familiar with us, go to the link I just put in the chat. We'll see you next week for talking about omnichannel optimization strategies. The following week on merchant of record model and selling globally, direct to consumer, but reducing your FX rates, your decline rates, and all that jazz. And we've got lots ones coming on. This has been in partnership with SIA, and we're really excited about getting this all up there. So thanks again. And if you want to see the record, I'll send out an email to everybody. If you want to see this recording, essentially it's right there on the portal because we pre-recorded it, and it's there in only 17 minutes. So, all right.
Josh, thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.